Hello and welcome into the RotoWire Esports Show. My name is Andrew Laird, joined as always by Ethan Sexton today to talk about Tuesday's two-game LPL slate on DraftKings. Ethan, the one-off situation seemed or worked again today. We had two favored sweeps, which is never fun, as we said, when you decide to play some underdogs. The winning lineup I saw at one point was a Thunder Talk team one-off, which I believe you played.
I did.
Yeah.
I did, but the problem for me was that I did the Thunder Talk one-off, and it really didn't matter which underdog team slot you went, because Rare Adams, I think they scored within a point of each other,
Yeah.
if I'm remembering right, so it didn't really matter. But the problem for me was that I played my long stack as EDG, and I needed the long stack to be JDG.
Yep.
So had the right idea, I guess, but the wrong execution, and didn't quite get it right, unfortunately. But it is what it is.
Yeah. I just did I don't even remember who. I think I did double support or double jungler, trying to get the two favorites in. That didn't work despite everybody winning. I'm starting to wonder. So actually, I think one of the main GPPs was a mid lane one-off, if I remember correctly. But I'm wondering if the recent success of the team one-off is making people think that's optimal when we really just have no idea. It's like such a small sample, but they were like, oh, that worked the other day, so maybe it'll keep working. But there were tons of people trying it this slate.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it seems like kind of a viable way to go, and popularized by that Fred Breon slate last week when they kind of broke the slate a little bit. I mean, obviously it didn't work to that extent today, because if you played an underdog team slot, you weren't getting the same point totals that Fred and Breon got that day with their upset win. But it is like a viable way to. It's basically you're taking a punt, right, on the team slot because it's so cheap, and then you can jam in players who are actually going to score more points than the team slot will. So I completely understand it. It's kind of cool. We're seeing some more original ways to build lineups and things like that this year, which is cool. So, because the standard for a long time has always been the 4-3 stacks. So it's kind of cool. We're seeing some ingenuity this year, and people are doing some different things, and it's worked on a few slates. So, obviously once something works, it's going to get copied and become a bit more of a popular way to go. So, it's kind of cool to see some of these newer builds come in, and we're not always getting the 4-3 stack or something like that. So it's making it a little more interesting, at least.
Yeah, certainly for the two-game slates. I feel like the 4 games. I mean, obviously everything's slate dependent, of course, but yeah, these 2-game ones are getting a little brutal. Although I was looking ahead to the schedule, we are going to get some 5-game slates on some weekends coming up, at least for the LPL. Yep. Obviously, the LEC already gave us some of those, but
yeah, I think after Chinese New Year.
Yeah, actually, it might be just before.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but I know they take some time off around Chinese New Year, and then they come back and they do 3 games in China on the weekends, I believe. So, we'll get some 5-gamers going forward, which is sort of what we were used to last year, I guess, during the pandemic when they were trying to catch up. There was quite a few 5-game slates.
Yeah. But before we get there, we've got another 2-gamer this week. This one seems much more reasonable than what we had to deal with this morning. We've got RNG slightly favored against V5, and then LNG even smaller favorite against BLG. I think any combination could work on this slate. Like double underdog could win, double favorite could win. The only stack that I found difficult to make, at least with a carry captain, was the 2 big favorites, RNG, LNG, and it's even not that crazy. I think because the games are close, like if they both go 2-1, which the odds kind of make it seem, I think you're going to see a lot of people convince themselves that an RNG, LNG with some sort of one-off player from the other teams is the way to go. So I think, to say they're not going to be that many dupes. Of course, they're going to be dupes, but I think we're going to see some more creativity on this slate tonight.
Yeah, it's not a very straightforward slate. So I think that helps, especially on a two-gamer when there's not just like two teams that you got to try to jam
Yeah.
in, or you're going to feel like you're doing something kind of dumb. So yeah, I mean we'll see some duplicates still because that's just the nature of the beast on these two-game slates. It's hard to get an original lineup on these two gamers just because there's only four teams you can choose from, so it makes it tough to do. But yeah, this is a really interesting slate. When you first look at it, you probably think, RNG. Let's look at RNG and go right there. Start building our lineups with RNG. But when you take a step back and think about it, I mean, Victory 5 are 3-1 this year, and they've looked really good as well. So it's not as straightforward as you might think. Just kind of first opening up the slate, and then that LNG BLG is really a toss up because both teams have looked fairly good this year. They're looking like teams that can compete for a back end playoff spot. So yeah, like to your point there with the reflected in the odds and everything, there's really not a clear way to go. Kind of got to give RNG the benefit of the doubt as being the biggest favorite on this slate. But yeah, I mean, even their series it's not like a slam dunk type thing, kind of, like we had today, especially with that EDG series. That was kind of like a layup that they were going to 2-0, right? But we don't have that tomorrow, so it's a good thing in that sense, though, because that makes it for, a lot more options. And like we said, hopefully less dupes, or at least not, 25-30 duplicate first place ties or something like that. So yeah, it's a good slate, honestly, for a two gamer. So it's interesting.
So before we were recording, we were going back and forth because we were trying to, figure out when to start. But I was like, I'd like to see the starting lineups.
Yep.
So we talked last time. We had Victory 5 on because of the whole whether you play Trigger, and if they lose a game to Rogue Warriors, does he get benched? He is not starting, but do you have concern that maybe he comes on if RNG take that first game?
I think there's at least some risk, right? Because they've shown that they want to get both of these guys game time. So if they lose that first game, I mean, it's kind of weird. Like the way they're doing their substitution patterns or their starting lineup patterns are weird because they're coming off a 2-0 on Sunday, and that was with Trigger. He played both games, and then now they're coming off that sweep, but they're bringing in Y4 for this one. So I'm not sure what the rationale is, because you would think if one guy is coming off a 2-0 and played pretty well, there's really no reason to bench him.
Right.
But they're mixing it up and bringing Y4 back in. So I think there's at least some risk that if they drop game one, they could sub him out and bring Trigger back in. Similar story with their top laners. They've got 3 on the roster. So Aodi's getting the start, but if they drop game one, does Langji come in? Potentially. I mean, so if you do end up playing V5, there is at least some sub risk there. That's for sure. So I know on Sundays when we were doing Sunday slate, we talked about the sneaky thing was to play the backup, and then when they drop game one, you've got him at minuscule ownership. And you were telling me yesterday about somebody actually did do that in the Discord. I think they played Y4, and even though he got a 0, they ended up still being able to cash in 50-50s. It's going to be a little bit of a tougher thing to do in GPPs though,
yeah.
And get a straight up 0, especially from that 80 carry spot. So that's a way to really differentiate things if you want to be bold, because obviously there's no guarantee of these subs coming in.
Does Y4 and Audi starting make you feel any differently about V5?
Not really, because they've shown that they can win with both of these guys. So it doesn't really make me feel different overall. I mean, I've said a lot of times that I don't think Y4 is that good of an 80 carry.
Yeah.
But I would say that RNG's weakest part of the map, and they're unbeaten so far this year, obviously, and they've looked really good. So take this with a grain of salt. I think their weakest area of their team is their bottom lane, specifically with Gala, but he's been perfectly fine. Like, it's just that I don't think of him in the same tier as some of the other 80 carries in the league. So me saying that he's the weak spot on their team because he's not a Jackie Love or one of these type of guys that we think about as the best AD carries in the league. It doesn't mean he's a bad player. So really, it doesn't make me feel I don't feel that much differently about V5 at all. I'm still leaning RNG to win that series, but can't really fault anyone for wanting to go to V5 because they've looked pretty good this year, and it just might be that RNG are maybe too much of a mountain to climb for them tomorrow. So I would lean RNG, but maybe V5 end up being the lowest owned team on the slate as the biggest underdogs, and you get some leverage that way going against the biggest favorites. And certainly wouldn't shock me if they won the series, but I would still lean RNG for that first series.
So this other one, would you have expected BLG to be an underdog to LNG?
Well, I think it's like it was kind of a toss-up either way because they're about at the same spot in the table. LNG have played one less series, but they both have 2 wins. BLG have 2 losses. LNG only have 1. So maybe they're giving them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there. That series is – I'm having a tough time figuring out which way I want to go with that one because I think where BLG have the advantage in the bottom lane, I would say for sure, but Light and Iwandi have been pretty good this year, but I just really like aiming still as a player, so kind of give BLG the advantage in the bottom lane because Mark is also a serviceable – pretty good support, and then Aiming's a guy who can take over games. But then when we go up the map and look at the lineup spots, Zika and Meteor are both pretty solid players, and they've been pretty solid this year. But I've always, Tarzan was always a favorite coming into this year. It's good to see him back and playing because of his lofty status in 2019 when everybody had him in the tier of one of the best junglers in the world. And then Icon has always been a favorite of mine since I've been watching League. And although, last year we said he kind of took a step back, he wasn't quite as good. He's been pretty good so far this year. So I kind of give the bot duo advantage to Aiming and Mark in BLG, but then the mid-jungle duo, I would kind of lean LNG. Although it's hard to say because I really do, especially like Meteor as a jungler. So... but I would give Icon the advantage in the mid lane, and then top lane is kind of just like a wash. So that's a really hard one to call. It's tough. I mean, I think we're looking at it 2-1. I mean, who knows? We'll see what happens when they come out tomorrow. But that one especially just doesn't feel. It doesn't feel like, I don't feel that confident going one side or the other. Honestly, I think either team could easily win that series. So. That's what makes it, this for a 2-gamer in actually an interesting slate because there's really no clear way to go, in either series. I think RNG will be fairly popular just because they're undefeated and have looked like one of the best teams in the league. But, like we said, you got to kind of factor in the fact that V5 are 3-1 to start the year as well and performing pretty well. So, yeah, it's going to make things pretty interesting tomorrow.
You said it multiple times in these videos, but how you stay away from a game stack, but it seems like LNG BLG would be the game to stack if you were stacking one. No?
Well, who knows, man? I don't, it's hard to say. I should have had the stats up, like the kill totals on the year. I should have pulled them up before we started.
They're even for like on the odds. They're literally the same. I mean, they're only the team kill props are just split based on who's a favorite, but like they're.
Right.
For total kills, they're almost the same.
Yeah, it's hard to say really because, in the past BLG were like a slower kind of team, didn't put up the highest kill totals. But, if you look at V5 and RNG, they're 2 teams that kind of push the pace a bit in wins and pick up high kill totals. So you could stack that series. Like, I wouldn't call you crazy for doing that one either, which makes it, kind of hard to judge really. Which way you're going to want to, if you were looking game stack, which series, would be the better one to do. I'm not really sure, to be honest. I think, on these 2-gamers we talk about it, obviously the 2-game slates make game stacks more viable, but it's kind of a tough call, really. I mean, if we saw a sweep tomorrow, I think it would be RNG sweeping V5. So I would have more confidence that LNG BLG would go 3 games, so maybe you'd look the game stack there, or maybe you don't even do like a full game stack. You try to fit a couple RNG in just to take advantage of the games not played. if you think that's going to be a sweep, and then hope for a bloody 3-game series with LNG and BLG. But
Right.
it's kind of a toss-up to me, man. Both series, it's a tough one to call. It's not so straightforward.
Yeah. I guess to what you were saying before, a V5 long stack is probably where the fewest people are going.
I would think so, yeah. I would think so. I mean, just because they're the biggest underdogs and, RNG are undefeated, looking like one of the best teams in the league, I think probably people, especially a 4-man V5, like you just said, is probably the lowest owned thing we're looking at tomorrow. But
yeah, the benefit of doing that as well, like if you're somebody who makes a couple lineups, even if you make one, if you decide to make 2 tonight, whenever, if you anchor your V5 as your 4-man, like you can play, like you could just interchange BLG, LNG in your lineup. Like you'd have the same lineup, but 3 BLG turns into 3 LNG in your set.
Right.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. A lot could go wrong. To your point, I was just pulling up the stats from our site for average kills per team and everything. So when we look at BLG are one of the top 4 teams. They're averaging about 16 kills a game. But then LNG, they've played one less series. They've only played 3 series, which is a couple other teams have only played 3 series as well, RNG being 1. So they haven't played as many games, but they're down towards the bottom in kills per game with only 12. But then we look at RNG are actually leading the league in kills per game, almost at 17 a game, even though they've only played 3 series so far. And then V5 are kind of in the middle with about 13.5 kills per game. So just when we're talking about game stacks, I think maybe we think it's more likely that LNG BLG goes to 3 games, which makes it a little more viable. But both V5 and RNG can push the kill totals up. So if that game goes to 3 games, that one could end up having more kills than the other series. Honestly, I think it's just that we think if there's going to be a sweep tomorrow, it's going to probably be RNG sweeping V5.
Right.
So just wanted to mention that because I was trying to pull it up to look at it as we kind of talked about the game stack angles there.
Yep. Yeah, makes sense. Cool. If you guys have enjoyed the video, if you could just please hit the like button below. Feel free to subscribe for all of the RotoWire videos covering a bunch of sports that we cover throughout. Also, the RotoWire Discord is open for all subscribers. If you are a subscriber and haven't gotten in there, plenty of conversation about League of Legends as well. We also have a little CSGO going on there as well. If you are not a subscriber and want to try us out, just go to rotowire.com/pod. That's POD, and that'll get you 10 free days to the site. It gives you access to everything that we have for every sport, as well as access to that Discord. So feel free to check us out. Ethan, thank you for that, and good luck on Tuesday.